Hey there everybody, it's Mike DiLisio. Today I'm going to be taking a look at Rolling Realms from designer Jamie Stegmaier and publisher Stonemaier Games. Rolling Realms is a roll and write style game that was originally developed as a free print and play project during the pandemic. But there was some appeal from people that had played it for it to become a full-fledged published product, and that's what we have here today. So let's head over to the table. I'll give you a general overview on how the game is played. Then we'll come back here and I'll give you my final thoughts. Okay, in Rolling Realms, you can have up to 6 players play a game. I'm just going to show a setup as if it were 2 players because every player would have their own identical deck of cards. And what you would do is you're going to be playing through 3 rounds in the game. So let's say that one player takes their deck of cards. They'll remove their little scoring card and their resource card. Everyone would do the same thing there. Everyone would have their own scoring card and their own resource card. And then one player is going to take their remaining cards that are all based off of other games in the Stonemaier Games catalog. All right. And they're just going to shuffle these cards up. In the game, you're going to be playing through 3 rounds, and you're going to have 3 realms that are represented on these cards for each round. So let's say that I just randomly drew Charterstone, Scythe, and Tapestry. So for this first round, every other player that are in the game is going to get those same cards out of their deck. They would just find those same cards. And so everyone's going to be working together on the same 3 realms per round. All right, so you've got these different realms, and all of the realms have different ways of utilizing dice that you're going to be rolling and potentially gaining resources that could then be used either to gain stars or to gain other benefits that you're going to use throughout the game. You're ultimately trying to gain these stars. That's points. That's going to determine the winner. All right. So once you've chosen the 3 realms that you're going to have for that round, what you're going to then do is you're going to roll the dice. I should say these big chunky dice. All right. So in this case, a 1 and a 4. All right. Now, everybody who's playing the game are working off of those same 2 dice. You're going to activate your realms using the values that are rolled on the dice. You cannot use both numbers on the same realm. All right. So you'd have to activate different realms to do that. And each realm is going to work a little bit differently. All right. So in this case, Charterstone says use a number to mark a building and gain a resource. Then note the other rolled die on the crate. That die remains available for another realm, or mark all crates matching that number. So let's say, for example, I wanted to activate Charterstone, and maybe I wanted to get myself a pumpkin, all right? So I mark this building. That's going to get me a pumpkin, which I could then circle on my card, meaning that I've got access to it. And then I note the other one is going to be a 4 that I put down here. Now that 4 is still available to be used in a different realm because it told me that here. This is just that on a later turn, let's say that let's say on a later turn, someone had rolled a 3 and a 4. I could then check off the 3 here, get myself a heart, and then put a 4 here. Why might I want to do that? Is that on a still later turn, let's say I had marked off another 4 somehow later. Actually, I wouldn't put it there. Maybe I'd go here. Well, I could have done doubles, but let's say I did this and I gotten a 5 and a 4. Now I've got 3 4s sitting in my crates here, and then on another turn I could use a 4 to get all of those, and you score 1 per marked crate with a number noted in it. So that's a way to kind of build up towards gaining stars. All right. So that's essentially how Charterstone works. Scythe is going to work a little bit differently here. So it says mark a number. The top row provides resources. The bottom row costs resources to gain stars. When you mark a top row number, you may also pay the bottom row resource cost in the same column to mark it. All right, so they're all going to have different ways of gathering resources, different ways of gaining stars, okay? This is going to be using kind of the polyominoes to fill in shapes, gaining a resource when you filled a complete square, and in this case, you're going to score a star per completed big row or column, okay? Big row meaning these here, all right? So a total of 6 possible. All right, and so all of these are going to work, again, slightly differently. Here we've got between 2 cities. Filling in a square, same numbers cannot be orthogonally adjacent, and you gain resources when completing a row or column, and you're going to score stars equal to the lowest score of the other 2 realms, okay? Can't be higher than the number of filled squares here. So you can see they're kind of doing, if you're familiar with other Stonemaier games, they're doing nice little thematic touches to kind of connect to those, all right? So these titles may be very familiar to you, maybe not, depending on if you've played other Stonemaier games, but you would go through, you're going to total up your stars. Once you have finished off the round by going 9 turns, then you're going to get another 3 cards, and then finally a third 3 cards, and you're going to be using your resources and getting those stars. So ways that you can use these, if you have 2 pumpkins, you can adjust a die. So these are some mitigation ways to mitigate the die roll. So you can adjust a die plus or minus 1. If you spend 3 pumpkins, you can adjust a die plus 1, minus 1, or 0. You can use it in a realm you've already used this turn. You normally can't do that. Hearts can be used to gain what is called a virtual die that you could then use that turn. You'd have to follow the same rules. You couldn't activate a realm twice. And you can gain a die of the same value as either rolled die. Using coins, if the sum of the rolled dice is 7, gain a die of the same value as either rolled die. Again, a virtual die. And then you can gain a die value of X, where X is the number of coins that you're spending. All right? And so everyone has those same abilities on their cards. So you're going to play through your 3 rounds, total up your points. Whoever has the most points wins Rolling Realms. Let's head back over and I'll let you know what I think about it. Okay, so hopefully that gives you a general idea on how Rolling Realms is played. Much of the actual kind of meat of the game is in looking at how each of those cards work and how they interact with each other. I didn't go into exhaustive detail about each of the cards, but I think you got an idea of how the game plays generally. So, first thing I want to do is talk about some benchmarks. These are some high-level things I want to talk about and discuss. These are things that I determine whether I want to get a game off the shelf or not. So, the first is setup and teardown, and in the case of Rolling Realms, it is a breeze. There's really very little to the setup and teardown. There's not a lot of components within the game. Everyone has their kind of deck of cards that make up these realms. They have their scoring card, and they've got their round tracker type of card. Not much to it. It's up and going in minutes, and so that's a big plus. The rules are another thing that I like to discuss here, and the rules also were very simple. There's not a whole lot involved. The things that require a bit more explanation, I feel like the rule book did a good job of. Things along the lines of how do you handle virtual dice, things that could be a little bit confusing. They also do a nice job of going into a bit more detail on each of the realms. So each of the realm cards themselves basically tell you how they work directly on the card. But if you wanted a more involved explanation, the rule book does that, and it does a good job with it. So nothing negative to say there. I feel like the rule book is good. I feel like the setup and teardown is perfect for the type of game this is. Art and components is the next thing that I want to discuss. First of all, what I would consider to be a slight negative is that I feel like they were going for a very particular aesthetic in this game. It's very minimalistic. And in some ways, that minimalism is good. It means that the cards are not cluttered. It's very easy to kind of mark off what you want to mark off and see what's what. But it almost feels minimalistic to the point of being unfinished to me. This still feels almost prototypey in its look. Again, I don't know if this was a conscious decision that was being made to kind of reflect how the product started, kind of the genesis of this product. But I would have preferred a bit more art on these cards. I would have liked it to look a little bit more finished and polished, I suppose. On the positive end, on art and components, the dry erase cards, making them all dry erase was a fantastic choice. it really, I feel like, was the only way to go with this. I mean, I guess you could have done it with paper, but no, it would have been a mess. This is the way to go. The dry erase cards are really good. Another positive with the components are those dice. Let me tell you, to me, those are the showpiece component of this game. Those two large, chunky dice, they're great. They feel great to roll. You know, since you only have two dice, it's great that they went ahead and made them big and impressive and something that everyone wants to roll those dice. Everyone wants to roll them because they're really, really cool. All right, so overall game experience. First, I want to talk about a couple of things that did not work as well for me, and then I want to talk about the things that I did appreciate about the game. First is that I was a little disappointed in that some of the realms just felt less interesting to me than others. There were certain realms that I felt like were exciting, that did things that were cool, that felt maybe more combo-y than others. And then there were other realms that felt a little bit blah, just not as exciting. The Between Two Castles one, not too exciting to me, whereas the Charterstone one I felt was pretty cool. So your mileage may vary on that. The ones that I found less interesting, you might find more interesting, but I just didn't feel like they all had that kind of the same amount of excitement to them. Another thing that I feel like is a potential negative is that if you're not familiar with, or you're just not interested in the parent games that these little mini games are based off of, Scythe, Tapestry, Charterstone, Euphoria, things along those lines, if you don't have that background, the thematic connections that are made between them and this game are going to be completely lost. And I think that's a shame. And I think it's potentially negative. I also do wonder if people that don't have any background with those games or don't have any connection with those parent games, are they going to really have any interest in this? My guess is maybe not as much, but I'm not sure about that. All right, so the things that worked well for me is the framework of the game, where you've got the deck of all the realms, and you're going to have one person that shuffles and randomly chooses three random mini games that all interact with each other. I really like that. I think that that's a very, very clever way to handle a roll and write game. And it works. I really feel like even if there's a particular realm, as I mentioned, some were less exciting to me than others. Even if you have one of those realms, it's not the only one you're playing. You're playing among three realms. And the interactions really seem to work. And that's a nice little trick to pull off. So that to me is the hook in this game, is that I like mini games in general. Whether it's board games or video games, I like mini games. And I like the idea of 3 different mini games every round. It changes things up. It keeps things feeling fresh. I like that. Also, I feel like the game length is just right. 3 rounds. You're taking 9 turns per round. It doesn't outstay its welcome. It doesn't feel too short. It feels just right. I like that quite a bit. The last thing that is a positive is kind of piggybacking off of something that I thought was a potential negative, and that is, if you are familiar with the base games that these mini games are based off of, you're going to really appreciate the little thematic touches that are there, because I know I did. I'm familiar with all of these games. I had played all of the base games that these are based off of, and I really enjoyed the little thematic touches that were there. You know, the Scythe version, the Scythe realm, does it feel like you're playing Scythe? Absolutely not. But I get the little thematic connections there, and I appreciated that. And so that is a positive if you are familiar with the parent games and you enjoyed them, you're going to like those little touches. So overall, Rolling Realms is a game that I do recommend. I'm giving it a 7 out of 10. I do wonder if it has a bit of a limited audience, in the sense that if you're not really familiar with the base games, are you going to have an interest in this? But again, I use that. I keep the context of how this project started, of how this game came about as being a free roll and write that was brought about during the pandemic, and that is now being offered to the public as a more polished product. And so in those terms, I can easily recommend this 7 out of 10. I feel like it does a lot of things well, and it feels unique amongst roll and writes, and that's hard enough to pull off in and of itself. All right, well, that's it for me. This is Mike DiLisio signing off from Dice Tower headquarters.